وأعوانه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قد نرى تقلب وجهك في السماء فلنولينك قبلة ترضاها فول وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام وحيثما كنتم فولوا وجوهكم شطره وإن الذين أوتوا الكتاب ليعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وما الله بغافل عما يعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم. A very important incident took place in Medina during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which created an uproar in Medina between the Muslims and the people of book, and also between the Muslims on the one hand and the hypocrites, the community of the hypocrites on the other hand. And that incident was the changing of the direction of the prayer, the Qiblah, from Jerusalem to Mecca. Jerusalem being in the north of Medina, north, a little bit northwest, not exactly north of Medina, northwest, a little bit to the west, and Mecca being south of Medina. So this is a big change. How much degree from north to south? 180. So when the Prophet started praying in Mecca, and some of the Muslims with him, the early Muslims, historians, some of them say the direction of his prayers, the Qibla was the Kaaba, the house of God, the sacred mosque in Mecca. Some say no, he started even in Mecca when he started praying with the Muslims, they were facing Jerusalem. So there is a debate among historians whether the Qibla in the beginning of Islam was Jerusalem or Mecca. But definitely when he moved to Medina, when he migrated from Mecca to Medina, for almost 17 or 19 months, less than 2 years, the direction of the prayer was towards Jerusalem, Al-Quds or Bayt al-Maqdis. Why the direction of the prayers was toward Jerusalem? Number one, because Jerusalem was the cradle of previous messengers and prophets and apostles, such as, who was the first one there, the patriarch? Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then after Ibrahim, there were many others who came, who lived in the Levant, who lived in Sham, who lived in Palestine, who lived in Jerusalem, who died in that land. Many of them, hundreds, I would say hundreds of prophets lived in that area. So it has a sanctity. God calls it the blessed land. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا, we blessed that land. So it is a blessed land. The land of the scriptures, the land of the prophets, the land of the messages, the land of faith. So the Prophet wanted to send a message to the Jewish community of Medina, to the Christian community of Medina, that our religion, Islam, is the continuation of the previous messages, continuation of the previous scriptures. It is not alien. It's not something new which did not exist before. Islam, with capital I, Islam means submission to God. And every prophet came. Every prophet who was sent by God, he advocated submission to God. God says in his book, we never sent any messenger before you, but he invited his community to worship God, to submit to God. So the Prophet wanted to send a very clear message to the Jewish community. The people of book predominantly were Jews, and then a minority of them were Christians. That we share the same principles, we share the same God, and then we share also the same direction in our prayers. So this was reason number one. He wanted to establish bond of affinity and a brotherhood with other religions, with the followers of previous religions. This was number one. Number two, Mecca, until before the 8th year of Hijrah, the 8th year of Hijrah was the center of what? It was turned from being the center of monotheism, worshipping God, into the center of what? Polytheism, shirk, unfortunately. This house, which was created in Mecca, the house of God, which was supposed to invite people to worship God, over the centuries after Abraham, after his son Ishmael, it was turned into a place of shirk and polytheism. So they would place their idols. Where would the polytheists place their idols? Where? Inside the Kaaba and at the top of the Kaaba. At the roof of the Kaaba, the top of the Kaaba. Do you see how we have in some of the mosques? What do you have at the roof of the mosque? You have a dome and minaret to signify that this is a mosque. The polytheists, they placed their idols, several idols, statues, which they created, several sizes, some of them tall, some of them short, some of them medium. They placed them at the top of the Kaaba from all directions, all directions. Not only that, even Mount Safa and Mount Marwa, where people during Hajj and Umrah, they march between these two mountains. When you finish the circumambulation of the Kaaba, the Tawaf, you move to Sa'i. Sa'i, when you march 7 times between these two mountains, Mount Marwa on the right and Mount Safa on the right and Mount Marwa on the left, 7 times. Also at these mountains, they placed their idols. So the Prophet did not want to face a place, the Kaaba, where the polytheists used to face and worship their idols. He did not want to do that. That was reason number one. Why the Prophet and the Muslims faced Jerusalem. What was reason number 3? That the Prophet faced Jerusalem in the beginning of his mission for almost 19 months or 17 months. What was reason number 1? That even Ammar does not know. This is why he's having his tea, enjoying his tea. Reason number 3, because the Meccans and the Arabs, they took a pride in the Kaaba. Because though they placed their idols there, but they loved that place. They cherished that place. And they used to come to pilgrimage. Even before Islam, pilgrimage did exist. When did pilgrimage start? From what time? Exactly. From the time of Ibrahim. Ibrahim was the first one who built the Kaaba. وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَاعِيلُ رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا. Him and his son Ismail, they are the architects, the engineers, and the builders of the Kaaba. And then pilgrimage started from that day. So way before Islam, hundreds of years before Islam. So after Ibrahim, unfortunately the pagan Arabs, the polytheists, they shifted away from monotheism, worshipping God, into worshipping what? Idols, into polytheism. Where did these idols came from? Did it originate in Mecca or it was imported from somewhere else? Imported from where? From almost close to Jerusalem, not Jerusalem itself, but from the Levant, Bilad al-Sham, Levant, Syria. Because the Arabs were merchants and they had two trips. The summer trip, the summer business trip was to the north. They go to Syria. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to Syria twice before he started his mission as a messenger at the age of 40. He went into a business trip twice to Sham. And then the winter trip was to the south. Where was it to? Yemen. لإلاف قريش إلافهم رحلة الشتاء in Yemen, شتاء the winter, والصيف in Syria. So when they went there, Syrians, before Christianity, Syrians were pagans. They were idol worshippers. They were idol worshippers before Christianity, before Jesus. They were idol worshippers. So some of those merchants, Arab merchants, when they went to Syria and they saw people worshipping these idols, some of these idols were attractive, beautiful. They would spend time on making them, building them, beautifying them. So they liked them and they liked the idea. So they asked the Syrian people, why do you worship these idols? They said, because they help us. We ask for rain. We ask them for rain. They send us rain. We ask them for food. They give us food. We ask them for healing, shifa, from sickness. They bestow shifa and healing on us. So those people, in fact, it was a main merchant. His name is mentioned in the books of history. He liked the idea. He said, then this is what we need in Arabia. We need rain. We need food. We need healing. So he purchased some of these idols from Syria and he brought them all the way to Mecca and he placed them on the roof of the Kaaba. And he said to the pagans, to the people of Mecca, who faded away from, slowly faded away from monotheism, from Tawheed. They shifted away. They shifted away. There was no messenger to come and preach to them. And of course, when one generation, second generation, third generation, they don't hear about monotheism, they don't worship God, do you think they would remain Muslims? No. Even you guys here, if you don't teach your kids the prayers, the next generation is not going to be a Muslim. If you don't remind them every single day about Islam, about their religious identity, religious obligations, this generation, your children are not going to learn anything. They're going to grow knowing nothing, and then they get married, and when they have children, meaning your grandchildren, they are completely alien from Islam. Do you know here in America, in this continent, in this country, there are some African Americans who are here now, they are Christians now, but their ancestors were Muslims. They were brought from Africa. They were shipped as slaves from Africa to America 200 years ago. They were Muslims. They were practicing. But then the next generation who came, they didn't find any mosque. The old generation died. Their forefathers, ancestors died. They, reached the age of 60, 70, 80, and then they died. The new generation, they knew nothing about Islam. And some of them, they changed their names. Some of them they retain their Islamic names. Still, the name is Islamic, Muslim, but the person is a Christian. And this could happen to any community. And I've seen also non-African American people from the Middle East. I've seen some of them here are Christian. The other day I went to bury a Muslim man. He is from the city of Najaf, the holiest city to the followers of after Mecca and Medina to the followers of Ahlul Bayt. The man is from the city of Najaf, born and raised. He came to this country 60 years ago, 60. His son was standing there, his son, his biological son. So when I asked him to help us to take the body of his father to the grave, someone said to me, Sayyid, this is a Christian. I said, is he Christian? He said, yes, he's a Christian. Because the father had married a non-Muslim lady. He didn't teach her Islam. And of course, she's a non-Muslim. And it's always, believe me, the role of the mother to teach the kids. The father is busy outside making money. If the mother is not Muslim, there is no guarantee for your son or your daughter to be Muslims, even if you are the best Muslim. This is why when people come to me and he says, I want to marry this non-Muslim lady, I tell him she has to convert. If she doesn't convert, sorry, find someone else. Find someone else, because you're going to have a conflict in your life tomorrow. Today you love each other, okay? Maybe you are on the same page. Tomorrow you're going to have children. Are those children going to go to the church, to the synagogue, to the Buddhist temple, to the Islamic mosque? Where? You have to decide now. Otherwise they lose their religious identity. Some people say, leave them alone. They can be, whatever they want to be. This is a freedom of religion. No, this is not freedom of religion. Because Islam respects other religions. In this book, we respect Musa. All the prophets of Judaism are respected and cherished and sanctified in our book. Jesus is sanctified, his mother Mary. But do they respect Prophet Muhammad? Do they accept him? Do they acknowledge him? They don't. They don't. This is the difference. This is the difference. Don't take religion for granted. Don't say, I'm a Muslim, my next generation until 100 years from now are going to be Muslims. No, there is no guarantee. If you don't take them to an Islamic school, if you don't bring them to the mosque, if you don't teach them at home, you're going to lose them. And they're going to lose their faith. So this is what happened to the Arab community in Mecca. They were worshippers of God. Ibrahim taught them how to worship God. They were monotheists. But because the next generations were neglected by their parents, they became polytheists. And therefore they started worshipping these idols. So the third reason why the Prophet faced Jerusalem in his prayers in the first 17 or 19 months in Medina, because the Arabs, they took pride in Mecca. God wanted to test Arabs, including the Muslims among them, that if the Qibla is going to change from your beloved city Mecca and goes to Jerusalem, are you still going to be Muslims and worshipping God or not? This is the reason. It was a test for the people of Mecca. So what are the three reasons the Muslims, on the night of Eid, we're going to have a final test, quiz. So what are the three reasons when Islam arrived, when the Prophet arrived in Medina? For the less than 2 years, they were facing Jerusalem in their 5 daily prayers. The direction was north, not south. Reason number one? Exactly, because the Prophet wanted to say Islam and Christianity and Judaism and all those prophets, they come from one source. We have one background. This is reason number one. Reason number two, because Kaaba was filled with what? With idols. And God did not want the Prophet to face the idols, the Kaaba which is filled with idols. Reason number three, God wanted to test the people of Mecca to see if the direction is shifted away from their city, from their Kaaba, from the sacred mosque, would they still be willing to worship God or not? And this is mentioned in the Quran. We're going to read them, inshallah. But then, after many months facing Jerusalem for their Qibla, the Jewish community, they started mocking the Muslims and ridiculing them, telling them, you have no independence. You are following us. You don't have your own istiqlal or independence. You are exactly following what we do. So your religion is nothing. Your religion is part and offshore of what? Judaism. And that would hurt the Prophet and would hurt the Muslims. Would hurt the Prophet and hurt the Muslims. And the Prophet was always looking forward. He knew that the decision of making Jerusalem was permanent or temporary? Temporary, not permanent, temporary. Therefore, he was watching for Jibreel to come, looking up, watching for Jibreel to come and tell him the good news that the Qibla, the direction of the prayers, is going to change from Jerusalem to Mecca. And this is what Allah says in chapter number 2, verse 144. قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهَكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Indeed, we are observing the turning of your face in the sky. He was looking up to the heaven where Jibreel comes. Jibreel comes from up to down. Allah is in all directions, but the journey of Jibreel is from the heaven to the earth. So the Prophet was expecting, looking into the heaven, up to the heaven, onto the heaven. قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهَكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Therefore, we will indeed, فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا. We will turn you to a direction, a qibla that is well pleasing for you. تَرْضَاهَا. Because you have been anticipating this, expecting this, wishing, aspiring this. Why the Prophet was aspiring to change the qibla? He loved Mecca, this is number one. But there are other reasons. Again, because the Jewish community, some of them, not all of them, were hurting him, saying that, listen, you have no independence. You have to follow us. See, you have to follow us. Where is your independence? You are not independent. That was the second reason, because the propaganda, okay, negative propaganda. But what was the main reason for that? Closer? No, it's not about distance. No, it wasn't about distance. In fact, Medina was in the middle, maybe closer to Mecca a little bit, but in the middle. Medina is here, Jerusalem is there, and Mecca is there. It's not about the distance. Distance has no role, but there is something more important to the Prophet. Exactly. Mecca was the first temple of worship established on earth. Where do we find this? In the Quran. إِنَّ أَوَّلَ بَيْتٍ وُضِعَ لِلنَّاسِ لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةَ مُبَارَكًا وَهُدًى لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The very first temple, place of worship that has been furnished and given to mankind to worship God, لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةَ. The one that is in Mecca. Mecca is the ancient name of Mecca. It was established 800 years before Jerusalem. 800 years. Mecca was established by Ibrahim. Jerusalem was established by King Sulaiman. And there is 800 years between them. 800 years. So Mecca is the oldest mosque on earth before Jerusalem. And also the Prophet wanted to win the hearts and the minds of the Arabs in Mecca. The pagans in Arabia. He wanted to attract them to Islam. So this is an extra reason for him to switch, for God to switch the Qibla, the direction of the prayers from Jerusalem to Mecca. He wanted to win the hearts and the minds of the people of Mecca and the surrounding. قد نرى تقلب وجهك في السماء فلنولينك قبلة ترضاها. We will turn your face, thy face, to a qibla that is well pleasing for you. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ. From now on, turn your face towards the sacred mosque. Where is the Kaaba? The Kaaba is inside the sacred mosque. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَحَيْثُمَا كُنْتُمْ. Then here God is talking to the community of the Muslims worldwide, in Medina and outside Medina. Wherever you may be, فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ. Face the direction, turn your face to the direction of the sacred mosque. They say when Jibreel came, the Prophet, there are two stories here. Story number one says, the Prophet was in the sacred mosque, facing Jerusalem. He was doing Salatul Dhuhr, facing Jerusalem. So the Jibreel, when he came, the Prophet had done 2 units of the prayers of Salatul Dhuhr. How many units we have in Salatul Dhuhr? 4. So he had finished 2 units. When he stood to do the 3rd unit, 3rd rak'ah, Jibreel came and turned him from north, turned him all the way 180 degrees to the south. And there were some men behind the Prophet praying. So all those men turned their face from north to south. And there were some women too standing behind men. It was a jama'ah, like here, Orange County Mosque, with a big difference between here and Masjid al-Haram, of course. So women also, they turned. So all of them, they turned. Can you imagine how they turned or not? Or you can't imagine? No, the earth does not move. The earth, of course, rotates around itself and the sun. But Jibreel took the shoulder of the Prophet. He turned him, okay? And when the Prophet turned, the Muslims, they did exactly the same. And the women who were standing before men, they did exactly the same. They turned. I'll show you how. This is how he turned. This is how he turned. And the Muslims, they turned around him, and this is how he faced. So the Muslims also who were behind him, they turned. Not that they stood and he turned, because if the Muslims were praying behind him and now only the Prophet would turn, he's going to face the people. But the people also turned too. Can you imagine that or not? So 2 units of the prayers. The beginning of the prayer was towards north, Jerusalem. The last 2 units, they were towards the Kaaba. He was inside the Kaaba. The second story says, the Prophet, he received Jibreel, so the news spread that the Qibla is changed. So there was, by the time the news reached another mosque in Medina, which is today Masjid al-Qiblatain. If you happen to go to Medina, there is a mosque at the outskirt. It used to be at the outskirt. Now it's inside Medina. When the news reached them was Salatul Asr by that time. There wasn't WhatsApp to tell them, listen, change. It took some time for people to travel by camel, by horse, whatever. So when the news reached them, they were during Salatul Asr, doing their Asr. So again, they did 2 rak'ah of Asr there, and then they switched from north Jerusalem to Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. And that masjid today is called Masjidul Qiblatain. And it used to have 2 qiblas. Do you remember when it had 2 qiblas? But now they removed one of the qibla. The Jerusalem one is removed completely. So it has only one single qibla. But I remember for many, many, many years, we used to go and see the old qibla towards Jerusalem and the new one, which is towards Mecca. And that is Masjid al-Qiblatain. So the direction changed. What happened when this direction changed? There was a huge uproar. by the hypocrites in Medina. Because this is something, imagine one day, tomorrow you come and you find this qibla in that direction. You will freak out. All of you, including me. Some people would refuse to pray. They say, well, what happened? For 20 years, the qibla is this, this direction. 25 years now we are in this building. All of a sudden you see it going into the other direction. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. Even if the Prophet is the leader, he's the imam, he's the guide, okay? But still people are going to talk. People are not going to remain silent. And some people, the weak-spirited people, are going to complain. Not only they're going to say why, they're going to complain. And some of them are going to refuse. They say, no, we would remain in the old direction, even if the Prophet is the imam. This is why God calls them سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاء, the fools, the weak-spirited. مَا وَلَّاهُمْ عَنْ قِبْلَتِهِمْ. So there was an uproar, and some people started to ridicule the Prophet, especially the hypocrites, that look at your religion. One day you face north, one day you face south. Why did you? Some Jewish leaders were upset. They came, they said, Ya Muhammad, Jewish rabbis, they said, listen, why did you change? He said, this is the order of God. I listen to God. This is not my choice. This is the command of God. They said to him, Ya Muhammad, if you go back to the Jerusalem Qibla, we promise you to follow your religion. We will convert from Judaism to Islam. But please go back to Jerusalem. So listen what God says in his book. Number 1, he says, قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهَكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. We are seeing you, observing you, turning your face onto heaven. فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَهَا. We will turn you to a qibla that you are pleased with. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. Turn your face toward the sacred mosque. وَحَيْثُمَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ. Wherever Muslims are going to pray from now on, they face the sacred mosque. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ. Indeed, the Jewish community, the Christian community, the people of book. Utul Kitab means the people of the book. The Jewish community has the Torah, and the Christian community had the Injil, the Gospel. Those people, they know, لَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. They know what you did is right. How do they know? Because in their book says, they read in their books, in their scriptures, that the prophet of the end of the time, Khatamul Anbiya, the seal of the messengers, will pray first to the north and then he will pray to Mecca. The description of that is in their books. They read it in their books. They are familiar with it. They know aforetime. Ahead of time they know what is happening. لَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ. They know what you did is correct. In fact, they anticipated this. They knew this is going to happen. They knew that the direction of the prayers to the north was temporary, not permanent. It's going to change from the north to the south, from Jerusalem to Mecca. لَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا يَعْمَلُونَ. God is not heedless from what they do. When they reject, when they are unhappy, God is not heedless from that. And then he says, سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاء. This is verse 142. Some of those weak-spirited, the hypocrites and others, and some of the people of the book, they will say, the fools or weak-spirited, سَيَقُولُ السُّفَهَاءُ مِنَ النَّاسِ, among the people, مَا وَلَّاهُمْ عَنْ قِبْلَتِهِمْ الَّتِي كَانُوا عَلَيْهَا. Why did they turn away from the Jerusalem Qibla? Why? What happened? Listen to the answer. Some people said, why did you change? Why did you change from north to south? The answer is, قُلْ لِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. The east and the west, the north and the south belongs to God. God has no direction, a specific direction. We cannot point at this side and we say God is here, or God is here, or God is here, or God is everywhere. Everywhere. Wherever you face, you are facing God. God does not have one dimension or one direction. Everywhere belong to God. لله المشرق والمغرب يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. Here, trying to say that Jerusalem or Mecca does not merit the direction of the Qibla. Not the city itself that merits the direction of the prayers, but it is the command of God. It's the command of God, not the city itself. Not the city. And sometimes God is going to ask you to turn to face a human being in your Qibla. Human being. Not Mecca, not Jerusalem. Human being. And it happened. Where did it happen? وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. The first Qibla was Adam. Allah asked the angels, take Adam as your Qibla. Adam, human being. He's a human being. So it's the commands of God which is important. If God tells you face this direction, you have to face. Don't argue with God. It's not because Mecca is more important than Jerusalem or Jerusalem is more important than Mecca. These are cities, ordinary cities. What is important? The commands of God. When you obey God. And therefore God said to Iblis, take Adam as your Qibla. Prostrate before him. Did he listen? He didn't listen. He refused. All the angels, they accepted and they prostrated before Adam because God is asking them. God is asking them. And when God asks, you have to listen to God. Except Iblis, Satan, who refused. And that was the beginning of his failure and his damnation. Because he disobeyed God out of arrogance and a prejudice. He said to God, خَلَقْتَهُ مِن نَارٍ. The first racist on earth was, not on earth, in the universe, the entire universe. This is before the earth, was Iblis. And therefore, what is important is to listen to God. God wants me to face this place. I will face. Kaaba, made of bricks. And you know how many times this Kaaba was demolished? Many, many times. Many times it was demolished through wars. It was burnt down, destroyed during Bani Umayyah's time. It was destroyed during flood. Many, many times. And it is rebuilt. So the significance of the Kaaba is symbolic. 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 And therefore, the hadith says, one single believer like you is more significant in the eyes of God than the Kaaba itself. One human being is worthy much more than the Kaaba itself. Symbolic. We don't worship the Kaaba. We don't worship it. We worship God. And sometimes God says, stand behind the maqam of Ibrahim. وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. Make the station of Ibrahim. Inshallah, those who have not been to Mecca, you will see the station of Ibrahim. Station of Ibrahim, Maqam Ibrahim, is a rock where you can find the footprints of Ibrahim on that rock. When he stood on the rock and he was building the Kaaba. That rock is still there, 4,000 years old, this rock. So God says to the Muslims, stand behind it as a gesture of honor and respect to this rock. God is respecting a rock, meaning you have to stand. So we have to listen to God. Not because the rock is sacred, the rock is a rock, but because the commands of God is sacred. Not because the actual rock, the commands of God. When God tells me to do something, I have to listen. His commands are sacred, not the rock. Not the rock. Why do we kiss the dharih of Imam Ali, mausoleum of the Prophet, or Imam Ali or Imam Hussein? Is it because this mausoleum came from heaven? No, it was made in Isfahan, in Najaf, in Iraq, wherever. But because the man who lies behind it, who's there, that man is sacred. The man who's there. This mausoleum signifies the Imam who's there. I'm not kissing a piece of iron. I'm kissing Ali ibn Abi Talib. Have you seen my friend sometimes when you don't see your friend, he's not there, but he has his dress, his coat. You go on, you kiss the coat. The coat is from Costco, $30. The coat is not sacred, made in China. But when you kiss this coat, you are kissing the person, the owner, the one who is wearing this coat. This is why. This is why if you go to Istanbul today, if you go to Topkapi Palace, very famous museum, breathtaking museum in Istanbul, you find a place where they put the turban of the Prophet. The turban, actual turban, and people love to see it. Why? Because they love the Prophet. Otherwise, the turban is what? Piece of a cloth. Piece of a cloth, Why Allah says in the Quran that Yusuf said to his brothers, اذهبوا بقميصي هذا. This is qamis, shirt. فألقوه على وجه أبي يأتي بصيرا. The father Jacob is blind because he cried and he cried for 40 years. He missed his son. He lost his sight. He became blind. He went blind. Joseph said to his brothers, go back from Egypt to Palestine. Take my shirt, this my shirt, بقميصي هذا. Cast it upon the face of my father. He will regain his sight. Can you imagine? Shirt is a shirt. It was purchased in the market. But because it was attached to the body of Joseph. And this is exactly what they did. They brought the shirt of Joseph. And it takes them days to travel from Egypt to Palestine. There was no flight, no airplane, days and weeks. As soon as they arrived, when they reached the boundaries of Palestine, what did the father say? The father said, إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُف. I can smell Yusuf, the fragrance of Yusuf. They said to him, you are crazy. See? Because you are crying and you have depression, You are imagining. This is hallucination. Where is Joseph? Is dead. He said, no, I am a father, I know. I'm not wrong. إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ لَوْلَا أَن تُفَنِّدُونَ. I know you're going to mock me and ridicule me, but I'm telling you the truth. So when فَلَمَّا جَاءَ الْبَشِيرُ, when one of those children, he started running. He said, listen, the caravan is slow. I'm going to take the shirt. So he started moving so fast until he reached his father Jacob. فَأَلْقَاهُ عَلَى وَجْهِ أَبِيهِ. He cast the shirt on Jacob's eyes. Immediately he opened his eyes. Because that shirt was attached to Yusuf. This is why some people don't understand. Why do we kiss the dharih? They call it shirk. It's not shirk. It's found in your book. If you read your book, you don't say this is shirk. The dharih is close to the body of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the body of Imam Hussein. We are not kissing the dharih. We are kissing the body of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the one who is sleeping there. And then let me conclude. Here, after that, they came, they said, Ya Rasulullah, the Jewish community, if you go back to Jerusalem, we're going to follow you. But this was an excuse. And this is what God says. Surah Al-Baqarah 145. وَلَئِنْ أَتَيْتَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ. If you grant them their wish, if you grant the wish of the people of book, and you go back in your prayers to Jerusalem, what would happen? Would they follow you? Would they honor their promise? They are not going. بِكُلِّ آيَةٍ. With every sign you follow them, مَا تَبِعُوا قِبْلَتِكَ. Impossible. This is an excuse. They are not going to follow. They are only bringing an excuse. If they want to follow, they know you are the messenger of God. Whether you face north, south, east, west, it doesn't matter. They're going to follow you. These are excuses. These are excuses. ما تبعوا قبلتك وما أنت بتابع قبلتهم. From now on, you are not going to follow their qibla. وما بعضهم بتابع قبلة بعض. Neither the Jews are going to follow the qibla, face the qibla of the Christians, nor the Christians are going to follow and face the qibla of the Jews. وَلَئِنِ اتَّبَعْتَ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِنَّكَ إِذًا لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. If you listen to these threats and intimidations and blackmailings, they're going to divert you from the right path. So remain solid on your path. Remain solid. Don't give concessions. Some parents tell me that my children say, we're going to fast and pray and observe hijab as long as you allow me to travel with my friends and do something illegal. Go to bad places. Allow me to go to these bad places, go to partying, go to wherever, nightclubs, and I'm going to listen to you. So what do you think? Should I listen to them? I say, read the Quran, gives you the right answer. Don't give concessions on matter of morality and ethics and religion. Don't compromise. When you compromise one of them, they expect you to compromise the other principles. And it is endless. This journey is endless. They are not going to be satisfied. Remain solid. When something is illegal, is haram, it's haram, period. Say sorry, I can't. When something is halal, is legal, permissible, they may do it. When it is not permissible, there is no concession. No concession on that. We learn this from the book of God. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma aghfir lil-mu'minina wal-mu'minat wal-muslimina wal-muslimat al-ahya'i minhum wal-amwat. تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك غافر الخطيئات إنك ماحي السيئات وجاعلها حسنات إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم تقبل منا صلاتنا وصيامنا وقرآننا ودعاءنا في هذا الشهر العظيم واجعلنا من عتقائك من النار وأدخلنا الجنة. Oh Allah, bring peace to Gaza and Lebanon and Palestine and Yemen and Sudan, all these places where there is suffering, where there is hunger, when there is killing, when there is blood. Bring them peace, Ya Allah. We are going through the last week of Ramadan, the very last week of this month. We don't know whether we're going to be here next Ramadan or not, whether we're going to be here on earth or with you in heaven, we don't know. All what we want from you is to forgive us and to make, inshallah, the last days of our life the most peaceful, the most fulfilling, inshallah. وإلى وعجل في فرج سيدنا ومولانا صاحب العصر والزمان وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثواب الفاتحة مع الصلاة على محمد